Are you looking for a new whiskey adventure? Then climb in and buckle up. Get ready for one hell of a ride on the Whiskey Trip podcast with your host, Big Chief. Join in as he and his guests explore whiskey and dive into whiskey stories from around the world. Now here's your host, Big Chief.
Let's hear a little bit about some of our sponsors. Barrel Proof. Smoke Your Bourbon has both bags of barrel chips sealed with real bourbon to enhance your barbecue and a smoke ring to smoke your cocktails with. After the bourbon aging process, the aromatic white oak is ideal for providing a source of rich, savory flavor that enhances any dish, such as beef, poultry, seafood, and pork. What I love is smoked candy pecans. You can find these bags of barrel chips in over 32 Buc-ee's locations and select Ace Hardware stores around the nation. Check them out at smokeyourbourbon.com. Also by Jimmy Pierce Design, making custom hats for every occasion. From the rancher to the businessman, this master hatter with 25 years of experience has you covered. I've ordered one of Jimmy's hats on my head from the first time my keen eye caught his craftsmanship. From the American cowboy hat to the fedora, there's no limit to what Jimmy can design for you. He only uses the best materials available and works to ensure every customer leaves happy. Visit Jimmy today at jimmypiercedesigns.com. Also by Leaper's Fork Distillery in Leaper's Fork, Tennessee. Leaper's Fork Distillery is an artisan distillery working to bring back the history and heritage of a small batch whiskey production to Williamson County. The distillery crafts premium spirits using local ingredients and limestone filtered water to create superior spirits with a signature taste. Yeah, you know I love their wheated bourbon. Leaper's Fork Distillery is characterized primarily as a low-volume, low-impact concept of production. They are excited and honored about bringing back a lost art and industry to a county that always puts its history and heritage at the forefront. Visit them today at leapersforkdistillery.com. Hey, it's old Big Chief, and yeah, you're taking another ride on a whiskey trip. And folks, I got a great episode for you today. I got a great guest with a great distillery. But first, make sure this is your last chance. Buy those tickets for the New Orleans Bourbon Festival. Use code TRIP25. Come see me speak in New Orleans in person. I guarantee you're going to have a great time, especially if you come to one of my seminars. You're going to drink whiskey with me. Hell, you can come up and give me a big old hug. I'll be all right with it. But come see me over in New Orleans. I'll be over the 29th of March. I'll be over in Austin, Texas at the Galaxy Whiskey Gala, raising money for teddy bears for children in the hospital. Come out, support a great cause. Them tickets are still available. Get out there and buy them today. I know you'll appreciate both of those whiskey festivals. But on to our guests I have today. I've got just a tiny craft distillery out there in Missouri. They're making this whiskey out there that I heard about. I've actually had it just a couple sips of it. But I've got Holladay Distillery, the Ben Holladay, and I got their Master Distiller Kyle Merklein with me. And welcome to the Whiskey Trip, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome to be on. Appreciate it. And it's kind of surreal for me, kind of at this point that now, you've had people who have tried our products, and it's not this whole brand new experience that we were facing a couple years ago. So pretty fun to be in this position. So thank you for having me.
I'm sure it is fun being the master distiller of a company, a distillery. And before we get into your background, why don't you take us through the history of Ben Holladay and the distillery itself? But I'm getting ahead of myself. I do got whiskey in my glass right here, my big old rocks glass. And I poured myself the 1856 original, the Ben Holladay bottled in bond. Now this is a rye bourbon, I'm guessing.
Yep, that's correct. So 1856 original, that kind of leads into our history. That's always how I go through all of my tastings as well. You know, we start with that one. That was Ben and David Holladay came up from Kentucky and really 1849 purchased our property and started renovating it and converting it into a still house. And they started with a specific mash bill. And it's that one that you're drinking. It's 73 corn, 15% rye, 12% malted barley. We they started making bourbon, and it would have been a different method, obviously, than what we're doing today. I don't know what type of distillation or anything like that. Aging wouldn't have probably happened, but made bourbon, on site, 1856 up until 1985, and the throughout that time, it was always that one traditional style, that mash bill, that 15% rye in that one, and so yeah, that's a big part of our history. You know, there's a lot of layers to our company history, and so that's kind of the fascinating thing, and what's really interesting to me. You started with the Holladay brothers and Ben Holladay. We tell this story. If you buy a bottle of that 1856 original, there's a stagecoach on it. He was known as the Stagecoach King. He largest private employer in the United States in the 1800 or late 1800s, and so really had all those stagecoach lines running west. He bought the Pony Express. Fascinating history. And so it's kind of paying respect to that and what he built, that separate empire, while his brother David was running the distillery. Then, fast forward, we changed hands numerous times and kept making bourbon. Short prohibition break. We did medical holidays and stuff here and there, but we didn't have the full-fledged license that I could tell, obviously, anywhere. And so we have some bottles that were medicinal purposes that were made in our company's history, but then continued on 1985, different owner at the time, and so we shut down. They chose to reinvest in a different property, and so kind of lost that bourbon making on site, but we didn't quit really, and so we continued on as a bottler with other brands and stayed operational here. From 1985 until really about 2015, when our current president, Mick Harris, really wanted to bring back that bourbon history. And so we had that different ownership group and different management then in place. And so it was bring back that history. So that's when we started kind of renovating that still house, 2016, laying down bourbon. And then 2022 was our first release, that one that you're drinking now. So all of that kind of the first one that we released after that hiatus, we wanted to pay respect to that past that we had throughout our history, while kind of changing up the package and presentation of that a bit to the consumer, because the consumer of today is different than it was in the mid 80s or that time period. So yep, kind of a shift and focus in on today's consumer.
Yeah, I think today people enjoy just a little bit more pepper and spice and at a higher proof than they probably did back in 1856.
Yeah.
And they're probably trying to proof down the whiskey as much as possible, which makes sense. You want to get the most out of that barrel back then. But now American whiskey drinkers, I think, have moved up in their proof. Anywhere from 95 to 105 typically. Mm-hmm. And they enjoy that spice because you do get a sweeter whiskey with it. And I tell you what, this one is packing it all in. It's got the spice up front, some cinnamon, just that bit of heat that lets you know it's a typical Kentucky style bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of oak on it. I get it. It's still 4-year whiskey, and I'm assuming it's bottled in bond, so that's the oldest in it? Or the youngest?
So we're 6 years. 6 years is the youngest thing that we released. And so
it does say 6 years on the bottle, so yep. The youngest thing in there is 6 years.
Yep, that's correct.
You guys are kind of in Missouri. You're on that line with Kentucky.
Yeah.
So you're same aging process.
Correct. Yeah, everything that we do, I kind of say often, we stayed true when we created that one specifically, but we stayed true to our history and how we made bourbon on site. And so we have that limestone spring water here that we use. We have 2-cooker system, column distillation, going into full-size barrels made with Missouri oak, Missouri-made barrels, and then going into our rick houses. And we do have the traditional rick house style, 7 stories, not heated, not cooled. And so, yeah, with our temperature, our climate, we're looking at it, I've pulled that up before, about a degree or two hotter during the summer and a degree or two colder during the winter. And so ultimately, it's very similar. We always I always pay attention to, if our distillery shuts down for a snowstorm, hey, next day, Kentucky's doing the exact same thing because it's the same weather patterns kind of going right through. And so, yeah, very much in line with everything that you would expect in a traditional bourbon in terms of production style and distillery feel overall as well.
Man, is this Kyle? As this sits on my palate, I get a little bit of orange peel on this. A little bit of this German rye bread that just has this nice spice to it, almost like some German rye bread has caraway seeds in it, and I get a little bit of that caraway in this. And for a 6-year-old whiskey, it's very, very beautiful. I'd put this right up against Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond 7-year if I had to compare it to something. There's a little bit different in the mash bill there and stuff. They got a little bit more nuttiness. You guys have a little bit more stone fruit in yours and caramel. So very, very beautiful whiskey. Hats off to you. So how long have you been with Ben Holladay?
Yeah, so I joined in 2016. So they kind of got it started up and running, hired in consultants, had gone through the process of getting the place started up, and then I joined to kind of run it full time. And so I've been here now. I guess it's coming on 8, almost 9 years now. So that was basically my background in whiskey making. Now, I didn't come from a family of distillers or plan on doing that necessarily. I grew up in Northwest Kansas, family farm, and dad kind of steered me away from that. It was in the middle of the drought in high school, and he's like, don't do this. It sucks. Like, it's just not worth it. And so go find something else. He told me and my brother and sister that. And so I wanted to still stay in the ag kind of field. So I went and got a bachelor's in biological and agricultural engineering. Went and made biodiesel for a minute, and then decided that wasn't quite as fun as what I'd like. So I went back and got a master's in, again, biological and agricultural engineering, same program, Kansas State University. But my master's research was focused in on kind of fermentation. So kind of hoping that I'd get in this industry. After that was making neutral spirits, not too far away from where I'm at, and was happy with that. But I drank bourbon, right? And so I was making vodka basically, but commercially, but drinking bourbon, and wanted to do that, but never dreamed that this would exist here in Weston, Missouri. And so when this job came open, interviewed and came to the facility, and it blown away. And so kind of all downhill from there, but it was a lot of luck to get into this position, I think, for me.
Wow. So you were making biodiesel, which is a distillation process. And where were you doing that at?
I was in Kansas City, Missouri, just working at it was Cargill.
Did you guys still use a typical still to make that biodiesel with?
Not so much. The glycerin side. So a byproduct of the biodiesel production is glycerin. And so the glycerin would be distilled. And so you had the distillation over there. But the biodiesel side, not as much. But yeah, it was interesting, a lot of fun. Definitely learned a lot about kind of that industrial production and how to make larger scale bioprocessing type of thing. But yeah, definitely glad that I chose back to continue on and try to get into this industry and field. So. Yeah, ultimately for me, it was all about staying with the grain and being able to take that grain and convert it to something else. That's always been a fascinating thing to me. You're in the combine and harvesting, and it's like, it's you think about what that's being used for, or what it's going to, and the ultimate end use of it. And so for me, that was always the fascinating part, and wanted to stay with that. So glad that I was still able to. It's a different field than what I would have ever dreamed again, but very, very, thankful for this opportunity.
I love your story. Going from the farm to the distillery, understanding that process of how that grain goes into the ground, the preparation to the ground you have to do before planting that seed, the care of of just maintaining your equipment properly. Leave it better than you found it. You don't bring it in from the field and just leave it there. There's still work to be done afterwards.
Yep.
You got to grease up everything every day and take care of it. And so it makes me appreciate you that much more. But then to hear you say, hey, I went into making biodiesel, and where I live at in Southeast Texas, we have just a couple small refineries here.
Yeah.
Actually, the largest in the United States is Motiva, but Exxon is here. They're very large, and they actually have a biodiesel program.
Okay.
And there are some Vendome stills over there. Which is just amazing to me. So then that you understand that process, that biodiesel could go back into that combine that's harvesting that same corn with, you're harvesting the corn with. It just fascinates me. Now I have a connection with you as a farmer's kid myself.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, I love it. That passion, that story. And then now you're making that old liquid Motrin, or aspirin as I like to call it, for the farmer that's been out there working all day in the fields, and putting it in bottles or into barrels and aging it. And you can hear that pouring into a glass.
Yeah.
I'm actually pouring some of your guys' Ben Holladay 6-year-old 1856 original. This is the Rickhouse proof, as you call it.
Yep.
Now, what proof does your whiskey come off the still and go into the barrel at?
So we come off the distillation column at 120 proof, going into the doubler, then off the doubler at 130 proof. From there, we'll cut it down to 118 for barrel entry. And so we're going into char 3 barrels, 118 proof, then letting it sit there, obviously, for at least 6 years. Then, when we pull it down, that Rickhouse proof offering, we're not standardizing that in any way, shape, or form. So it's the proof that it comes out of that Rickhouse. And so let the floors of that Rickhouse kind of dictate that proof point, and really drive it from there. And so, we're making Missouri bourbon, so we had to be a bit non-traditional. We couldn't just say cast strength or, whatever other terminology you want to have. So Rickhouse proof is what we have for that one.
First off, I love that you call it a rick house, because some people say rack house, warehouse. I've heard barrel house. I've heard all kinds of shit.
Yep.
And I've actually said rick house myself, and people are like, you're wrong. And I'm like, what makes me wrong and you right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I've been into many of a rick house, and I'll ask people, how many rick houses have you been into? And I'll start telling them the difference between a rick and a rack and palletized. And they're like, oh, you might know something. I do.
Yep.
You challenged me.
It's always fun when people challenge whiskey knowledge and have no idea if you have any in it yourself or not, but they just challenge you. So, yeah.
Man, I just took a big old sip of this, and this is 123.3 proof.
Yep.
I love that you put the decimal point on there, because it tells me that, when I see a whiskey that's 123 proof, that makes my mind wander a little bit, because it's pretty hard to get to that even number, right?
Yeah.
At least in my mind it does. But this whiskey right here, folks out there, and you can find this readily available on the shelf, right?
That one, yes-ish, depending on where you're located at. Now, the Ben Holladay 1856 original Rickhouse proof one is only bottled once a year. And so that's, you'll see it a bit more in the fall, maybe throughout, but then kind of slowing down a bit. But yeah, it is available. Generally, if you see our bottled and bond products, you're going to see that one of those next to it.
Now, I got to say, this is at a warehouse C. That must be a special damn warehouse. Floor 7. It tells you a mixture of the percentage. So floor 5, 53%, floor 4, 45%. And this is what I got to say about this. Isn't this a giant compliment come from me? I would say that this is a Elijah Craig barrel proof killer right here. Mad respect to this whiskey right here. And that was after 2 sips of this. My God, it's good. I really enjoy it, and I am a weeded bourbon king. I'm the weeded king of Kentucky. as they used to say. But this right here, this rye bourbon, it's in my glass. I got to say cheers to you, my friend. That is mighty awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, that one's pretty special to me. I very much enjoy that. And, we up here in those seasons of Missouri, winter, that's the pour I'm going to often. It just kind of hits everything that I'm looking for with that. And we, I kind of talked a bit about our history. We always did. So we had bottles when we were recreating and distilling again. We could go back to our history and taste bottles, but they were always at that 86.6 proof is what they always used to bottle at. And so I never really got to experience that full flavor from the barrel from what they used to do. So always kind of wondered what it would be like. We always knew we could make good bourbon, and so thankfully as we went on and got to that 6 year mark, I got to taste from. I was personally tasting from the barrel. Our VP of marketing and sales as well, and we knew how good it was, but our company was kind of afraid. 100 proof was the highest we had done. That bottled and bond that you had just tried, that was the highest product we had produced in proof point wise in our company for bourbon. And so our president didn't know if it. He's not a whiskey nerd, not paying attention to the marketplace necessarily. He had his couple bottles he'd go to, and he had to be convinced to release a full strength version of that and the Rickhouse proof version. And so thankfully, we were able to do that in November of 2022. So it took us about 6 months to convince him to let us put one out. And then did that at the Welcome Center, sold out very quickly. And so then from there, it was a matter of, okay, we proved it. People do want to actually drink 120 plus proof product. We need to roll. Let's do this. So it was a lot of fun to be able to do that. Though some of those early bottlings were my favorite, but glad we are able to get that out into the world.
Well, those first couple of years there, were you nervous? Hey, is this going to work? We're a distillery outside of Kentucky. We're not just really a craft distillery. I wouldn't consider you guys a craft distillery. You're not Jim Beam. You're not Jack Daniels or Heaven Hill, one of the big five, right?
Yeah.
But you are wilderness trail size.
Yeah, we're probably a bit smaller than them overall, but yeah, we're doing 14 barrels a day, and yeah, so we're laying down a good amount of bourbon, and yeah, you have Rickhouses. Rickhouse C was the first one we started filling up, and it when it's full and it has 10,000 plus barrels in it, it's very much for me a little bit of paranoia. Like, okay, what's going to happen? I know what we used to do, but it's kind of all riding on that initial release and making sure people like it. And obviously, you want to take care of the home market, and Missouri is our home market. And we thought, okay, and we did. We went there first, but we need to be able to sell product outside of Missouri as well. And so then those first couple releases where it kind of hits different bordering states and all those different sending it off to media types to review and to taste. It's what are people going to think of this? And so yeah, it's been a wild ride for all of that. You hope that it all works out, and for us, we went with that route. It's Missouri bourbon, and so people will always question, okay, are they sourcing this? So we from the beginning went bottled and bond. No, this was our product, and then just took it a step further with, just like you said, you read that side chart. Let's tell all the details, full transparency, tell everything that we possibly can about this, and just really embrace that, so that people, they're going to have questions. It's Missouri bourbon. That's not traditional necessarily. So let's just go ahead and lean into this and answer all the questions that we can possibly do up front. And so that was a big part. We knew we'd have questions about all of it, and so. But yeah, long-winded answer to yes, I was very paranoid with while waiting until we released.
Now, there's one thing on your bottles that I think harkens back to the 70s. And I think you guys probably get dinged on just a little bit. But these bottles don't have a cork in them, they have a screw cap.
Yep.
Now, was that by design, or was that like, okay, we're going to try to save money on cork or
Yeah.
rubber stoppers, or we just want to go this route?
Yeah, it was by design. When you look at, I mentioned bringing back distillation, everything was about kind of the past and being inspired and influenced by that past as much as we could, in recreating today's product. And that was also the design of the bottle is the same thing for us. When you look at what we put out throughout our company's history, it was a very basic liquor bottle, not overly decorated. It wasn't, something where now in our company's history, yeah, we have the decanter history as well, but most of the liquor bottles were all standard, you know, basic bottles with that screw cap. And so it was okay. Let's look at that. And we had some mock-ups, some bottles that had a cork in it, but ultimately we decided too that we as consumers of bourbon while we were waiting had so many corks break, and so many bottles that just kind of seemed like they were off from that. And it's like, okay, closures have become better with the corks, but that quarter screw cap, really we can get a lot tighter and get better closure overall with that. And so it was kind of also influenced by the past, and then with that decision in mind, we really wanted to do that. And Michael Veach, bourbon historian, was here on site, and that was one thing he called out initially too. Was he's like, no cork, and we thought, okay, well, he doesn't necessarily like it, but then he said, well, that actually helps preserve the whiskey long term, and so he's as a bourbon historian, obviously he wants that. It's like that it is what's best for the whiskey, storage wise. So yeah,
The only thing I don't like about it personally, not that it's a screw cap, but on Dusty's, one of the things I get on a Dusty is like this lemon pudgy taste, like it's oily or something in it. And I believe it's because that there's that piece up inside the cap that eventually gets down there into those Dusties. Something happens there, chemical reaction, and it gives Dusties a bad taste to me. That's just my opinion. And but I don't mind the screw cap. That's not going to keep me from buying. I'm like, well, maybe they saved a quarter or two on that.
Wasn't based off of that. Ultimately, I don't even want the bourbon to sit on a shelf that long where you have to even worry about it. I think drink the bourbon and all will be fine. So
I'm sure in 20 years I'm going to find a Ben Holladay somewhere that's been sitting somewhere, and I'm going to buy it and I'm going to drink it and I'll probably enjoy it. I'm going to be like, damn, I'm glad I found this little Dusty right here. That somebody messed up and didn't buy it because they decided, I've been drinking Jim Beam all my life and I'm going to stick with Jim Beam. Well, folks, I got to tell you, if you're looking for a new brand, a brand that I believe out there that is preaching, walking the walk the talk, this would be it right here. They put everything on the label that you need to know about a whiskey. It is Missouri whiskey. There's nothing wrong with that. I've told people before, and they're shocked, that one city in Peoria, Illinois, made more whiskey at one time than the whole state of Kentucky. Don't believe me? Call old Michael Veach up. He'll tell you. He'll tell you the truth. So just because somebody says it so, like saying that Kentucky produces 95% of the whiskey, I don't know if that number's right anymore. I think it's more than a 60% they might produce that much. But there's so many craft distilleries out there, and distilleries, mid-sized distilleries like Ben Holladay, that producing a great whiskey out there that you should enjoy. The flavors of life, as I like to call it.
Yeah, and I don't know all the specifics. I wish I had time to dig into bourbon history, but it does seem, you mentioned Peoria, Illinois, but it does seem like back prior to Prohibition, you had much more acceptance of kind of whiskey and bourbon being made throughout the country, and then after Prohibition, it kind of became dominated by the Kentucky. That was the thought, and we did hear that, when the U.S. was looking at protecting the term bourbon, Kentucky wanted it to be a Kentucky thing, and I know at least some representatives from two different states said no, that's not true because we're making good quality product, and it was Tennessee and Missouri, and so we were part of that history as well. But yeah, uh, there was a lot of bourbon being made throughout the country, and it's cool to see that kind of being back there. I think and having those regions that you have. You're talking about Texas bourbon or coast bourbon or just any type, throughout the country. And even going back to the beginning, the intro, I'm always fascinated and like to see those farmer distillers kind of popping back up, and a lot of good examples of those going on now.
Frey Ranch,
Yep,
out in
exactly.
Fallon, Nevada, they're making some pretty good whiskey out there.
Yeah.
I'd have to say.
I'd love to go see them sometime because a lot of respect for that. It's facing as a Missouri bourbon, you face those stereotypes all the time, and so anyone outside of Kentucky that's making bourbon, I applaud them because it's not easy to always face that.
I think that's nail on the head right there. You hit the nail on the head. That not all the facts people are putting out there are the God's honest truth. And as much as I love Kentucky bourbon and whiskey, I have to respect the history that's out there that we've tried to bury and that one association might try to bury because it's good for that state. It doesn't mean it's good for all the other states.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think one of the things I noticed you said, and I love this, because you said we want Missourians to drink our whiskey. And I've told people that time and time and time again, win your yard, win your backyard, win your neighborhood, win your city, win your state. And once you've done that, then you can expand and have distribution in other states. Yeah. But until you do that, you haven't proved that concept of operations.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I have seen photo after photo of your guys' distillery. It's beautiful. I've seen people talk about your whiskey. I was one of those first social media people that got a box of the bottled in bond. It was in a beautiful box. It was like wintertime, or maybe early spring. And I remember meeting in a whiskey parking lot, and your guys' social media teams are like, hey, they had a whole list of people and I was on the list, and I was like, man, I don't know how I made this list. And, but I was grateful for it. We did a review back in the day on it. And, and I was like, my new show here, the Whiskey Trip, I was like, I got to have these cats on here. And, I've said that, and I don't believe I've had a Missouri distiller on the Whiskey Trip. So you're the first one. And
Awesome.
I promised that. I promised people that I would go to different distilleries and not go back to the same well over and over and over again. So proof's in the pudding. Listeners out there, hopefully I'm holding true. I'm having craft distilleries on. I'm having mid-sized distilleries on. I've had some giants on. I had old Bernie Lubbers from Heaven Hill on. So I'm making my paces across the United States, and I think I'll have some Irish whiskeys on pretty soon, and some Scotches and some India whiskeys. So look out for those episodes. Trying to do it right. Well, Kyle, we're up against the first half. I know it's went quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
It always seems to do that when you're having great conversation. But listeners, you stick with us, and we'll be right back. Let me finish telling you about the rest of my sponsors. Seldom Seen Farm, bringing bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup goodness from everything from pancakes to whiskey cocktails. Seldom Seen Farm in Northern Ohio has something magical for your whiskey cocktails instead of that old basic simple syrup. Kevin Holladay and his family are harvesting the sap from over their 5,000 maple trees and turning it into something delicious, maple syrup. He then goes a step further by aging in bourbon barrels for 6 to 9 months. That's right, bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup. Shh, don't tell Miss Viv, but I love to pour it over my buttered pecan ice cream. Visit them at seldomseenmaple.com. Also buy 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirits. The 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirits Company is an extension of the mountain lifestyle, bringing together the old and the new. Generation after generation, men and women alike, all share the same passion, enjoying it for a day, a weekend, a lifetime, or somewhere in between. No matter how long it's embraced, the combination of friends, mountains, memories, and spirits brings people together like no other. As an Army veteran myself, I'm proud to have them as a sponsor in honor of the legendary 10th Mountain Army Division. Enjoy one of their fine whiskeys today. Visit them at 10thwhiskey.com. And finally, by the New Orleans Bourbon Festival from March 19th through the 23rd in New Orleans, Louisiana. Let the good times roll. The motto of a city that knows how to host a party. Now, couple that with a historic relationship with bourbon, world-renowned food, music, and culture, and you have one hell of a festival. Their mission is to provide their attendees with an opportunity to enjoy exceptional bourbon and cuisine surrounded by the charm and culture of New Orleans. They do this by inviting the finest bourbon distillers from around the United States and restaurants from the Big Easy. They provide the most experienced and relevant speakers like Old Big Chief. Come join this amazing and educational bourbon festival with me and just a few of my friends. Buy your tickets today at NewOrleansBourbonFestival.com and use the code TRIP25 to get 10% off your purchase today. Cheers. All right, listeners, we're back for the second half, and I've got Holladay Distillery, and I got Mr. Kyle, their Master Distiller, with me, and we've been chatting about their whiskey, about how damn good it is. And lo and behold, they sent me 2 bottles of wheated bourbon. Now, that's a mistake right there, because I've been looking at these, and I've been wanting to drink them, and I've had to keep my hands off of them. But listeners, you know me. I love wheated bourbon. Anything with wheat in it, like I always say, you give me some cream of wheat, I might try to drink it. Any wheated cereal, anything with wheated bread, it makes me think about whiskey. It makes my mouth water. But I poured this soft red wheat, bottled and bond, 6 years old. Kyle, tell us about this whiskey right here.
Yeah, so our 1856 original that we started with, that was the history, that was the past, and I think this one is kind of the transition for us. Mick Harris, I mentioned him a couple times, but he likes wheated bourbons, similar to you, and so I like keeping my job. I made one for him, and that's kind of the end of that. When we started doing this, ultimately, when we don't have a history of making a wheated bourbon on site, could have changed up a million different things. We could have switched all sorts of different things in our process, but we had this history of making bourbon. And so I wanted to kind of still pay respect to that. And so really, this is a study in one grain. You switch out that rye in the mash bill and put in soft red winter wheat into that, and that's what our soft red wheat bourbon is. So it's all made the same style, same yeast, same distillation, same 118 barrel entry, and then going up into the rick house. And so kind of letting that one grain speak for itself in the process overall, and seeing the difference that does to the taste profile. So that's kind of the quick rundown. A lot of the things that we did with the original, we carried through on this 6 years old minimum age statement, bottled and bond, so 100 proof, and then that side chart that talks about where the barrels came from in the rick house, continuing on with that full transparency for this one as well.
Man, I tell you what, this the nose on this alone, just sweet, bright red fruit, a vase of flowers for me, just that like a rich butterscotch to me. But then I sipped on it, and I'm like, ooh, man, this is nice. That sweet caramel coming through, that Cracker Jacks, a little bit of a peanut for me. Man, this is very nice. It's deeper than I thought it would be at 100 proof. And I like that medium finish that I'm looking for. Everything in a wheater that old Big Chief would love. This would be a front porch sipper right here, or you wouldn't get yourself in trouble. Now I'm about halfway through the second half. I'll crack that rickhouse proof of it, and I'm sure that's going to blow my mind.
That one, yeah, that one's pretty fun. It's for us, and I don't know exactly where out. I'm assuming your listenership is pretty spread out, but this soft red wheat, that is the one that you'll tend to see more readily available. That's the one that we kind of spread throughout. I mentioned earlier, again, taking care of Missouri, and the Missouri's the home. We laid down less of that original mash bill, and so that's our kind of closer to home, and you'll see it throughout the country. But the soft red wheat, that's the one we wanted to play in with throughout the country, because we again, we like wheated bourbons as well, and also taking it to that point where it's that 6-year old bottled and bond. You don't see a lot of those. A lot of the uh, you know more traditional styles of bourbon are using that rye, and so we also felt like, yeah, we wanted to have that wheat, and play in that realm with the 6-year old bottled and bond as well. And so that's again one you'll see a bit more often. Definitely hope people pick it up and give it a try, because we enjoy it around here. That's for sure.
Now, what's the price on a bottle of that of the just the bottled and bond?
So obviously depends upon state, but I think our SRP is $54.99 to $59.99 is kind of the general. But then obviously each state's going to have your different taxes and whatnot, and so
Yeah. So in Washington State, it's like $100 bottle.
Probably, yeah. I haven't been up there for a while, but yeah, that's not going to be super cheap up there, but it's compared to everything else. So I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'd tell you, you were asking about where our listeners are for both the whiskey trip and the bourbon life. We're listening to all 50 states and 32 countries around the world. We got listeners in Australia, Japan, China. We got some listeners in Russia. We got a whole bunch in Germany, in the UK.
Okay.
Like I said, around the world, you're listening to me. Thanks for giving me a listen. Why don't you drop in my comments on Facebook and tell us if you would like to have one of these bottles of Holladay. Are you guys distributed outside the States?
So the only country we are is actually in the UK. So you mentioned that. So yeah, the partner over there has soft red wheat, bottled and bond, and rickhouse proof over there, and so kind of playing in some fun bars in London and throughout the UK, kind of targeted on that. I think it's for us. I mentioned we have other brands as a company, and so Five Farms Irish Cream is one, and Tequila Rose cream liqueur is another, and so those two kind of are international brands for us, and the UK does well with those two and that partner over there. So they were asking about bourbon, asking about having a wheated bourbon for their front, and so kind of decided to do that and reward them with all their good work on the other brands. And so it's been fun. Got to go over there to launch, but it's relatively small compared to the U.S. obviously. So
a smaller market.
Yeah,
really, probably the size of. England is smaller than the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Us Texans like to drink just a little bit of whiskey.
Oh yeah, yeah. We plan on keeping all our bourbon here in the States, but every fun trip that you can take, not a bad thing either. So,
well, I think that's why you need to launch in Australia.
That sounds like a great plan. Yeah.
I just need to talk the bosses into it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you put a fun list of other countries, we'll line it up.
Well, hell, I'll just come work for you guys and go with you. I'm sure I can get more people to drink your whiskey. I guarantee you that, because they're going to be drinking with me, and then that even makes it better. The national branded world brand ambassador for Holladay. That sounds like a good title. Retirement job for Big Chief right there. I can't sing a damn song and I can't play no instruments, but I got a beautiful voice to talk about whiskey.
There you go.
It sounds like I drink a bottle already today, but I didn't. So let's talk about the distillery itself and folks that want to come to the distillery and to pay you a visit.
Yeah. So we, Weston, Missouri, for those that are unfamiliar with Missouri locations, we're just north of the Kansas City airport. So 15 minutes away from the Kansas City airport. And so, yeah, we're kind of in that realm. And we are really tour-wise, mainly weekends. Check out HolladayDistillery.com to get most of the updated regular hours. But yeah, we offer tours. But even if you don't come for a tour, you can come in for a tasting, see our welcome center area, buy bottles. We're I know initially people were upset that we didn't have a lot of distillery exclusive releases, and we're trying to ramp some of that up. But we also wanted to send out those good products out into the market and let our partners in the market have some good things too. So, yeah, you can usually find some interesting products here that we have as well. But and then tour wise, we know we offer that weekends and get to see the property. It's I'm very biased. I admit this all the time, but it's a gorgeous property, 180 acres surrounded by state park, and it just kind of feels like what you would expect a distillery to feel like. And so you can come through, see all of our distillery, walk in the Rick House, check it out. We're transparency is what I preach a lot, and you can see everything on the tour. It's not like we're not hiding anything. We don't have a larger scale production facility hidden in the back, or more rick houses, or any sort of other warehouses where we're aging stuff. You see what we're doing here, and so yeah, very very much encourage people to make their way out if they get a chance and check out Holladay Distillery. For HolladayDistillery.com is where that kind of tourism side lives.
I love it. And I think probably one of the best times to maybe come there is around the holidays, around Christmas. You guys have it all decorated up and stuff. And
Oh yeah.
There's nothing better than having some soft red wheat rickhouse proof whiskey bourbon to lighten you up for the Christmas cheer.
Oh yeah, yeah. The nice red bottle too fits right in with the Christmas decorations, so it works out.
Yeah.
Blends in with the stocking.
Now, I just poured myself a glass of this right here, and I'm excited about it because the nose on this, folks, it is like a holiday in a bottle. It is Christmas in a bottle to me. I got a little bit of that allspice, cinnamon. Man, it is just so good. Let's take a sip of this. I got to say cheers to you, Kyle.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very curious, to hear your thoughts. This one is one that I very much enjoy again as well. Those Rickhouse proof ones. It's hard for me to say no to a pour of those, but that's one that I'm excited to see anytime we're out throughout the country.
Well, I think number one, your entry point into the barrel. A lot of distilleries in Kentucky go in, I think, at 105, if I remember right. And going in at 118 does something totally different. And then your mash bill is not a typical Kentucky mash bill where they'll have a 4 or 5% malted barley.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, you're going, that 15, 12. That's something totally different. And I think that percent of malted barley does give this something so different. Now, the taste on this, I got some red delicious apples, baking spices, as I already said, and that rich caramel that almost went too long in the kettle. Not to where it's burnt, but it's almost a toffee, I would say. And then when I'm sick, the viscosity on this obviously is just amazing, but it's like getting that first bite of cherry pie that's nice and creamy. There's the flake and the butteriness off of the crust with the cherries. Those baking spices are just busting through. Very balanced for me. This might be a Weller 107 killer right here.
Thank you.
All day, every day. That's some mighty fine
Yeah, not bad.
homage from me.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, that's one where we very much enjoy it, and you kind of nailed it too. I think for us, it's me looking back, I guess 8 years ago now on that one. But looking back at what were we going to do with this this wheated bourbon, and yeah, you can see and look at and kind of guess, or people have ideas of the Kentucky ones, and I could follow those, but it's I really wanted to do something a bit different, and so it was truly just not overthinking it and keeping true to our history and seeing what that would do with it. Because as you mentioned, those few points, that it's not an exact replica of other wheated bourbons that you're going to try. It has a similar profile, and it's still a wheated bourbon, and you're going to know that. But it's not just copying one or another.
Yeah, I think as it sits on my palate, I'm getting a little bit of a ginger snap cookie with some cream. That's like one of my favorite things at night times. Get some cookies and some milk and sometimes sit there with a glass of whiskey too. But ginger snap cookies kind of take me back to it as a child, and in that brown bag, and then that ginger is playing with me on these right here. Would be excited to see these get a little older. This is 6 years.
Yep.
If it was 8 or 10, I truly feel like, folks, if you were like dying to get your hands on a pappy out there, and you can, or you can't afford it, I would suggest that you go out and find this baby right here, and surprise yourself with something, and you're gonna be very delighted with picking this bottle up. If you can't find that Weller 107, if you can't find what you want from Maker's Mark, this right here, this wheated bourbon, it's got the old Big Chief seal of approval. I'll guarantee you that. This is a bottle I'll keep on my shelf. I already had one in my liquor cabinet. I didn't want to tell Aaron that, but I have had some, and I do love those bottles of wheated bourbon out there. The Rebel from Lux Row, but I think this stands up against any of them, and that's saying something, especially against somebody like Maker's Mark that's been doing it for so long, and or Buffalo Trace with the Weller line or the Pappy line of their wheated bourbons. Most people know those. Most people don't know the Rebel line from Lux Row, but they do just fine with theirs, or they got the Penelope wheated and all those. But this right here, if you're looking to spend your money in Missouri, you're from Missouri, you'd almost have to have one of these on your shelf. If you're a Missourian, and I was stationed in St. Louis for a few years, and I wish you guys were open then. I would have had a bottle on my shelf then.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you guys shared this with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And share the knowledge of it with me. Who decides where the barrels are coming from? Which floor? Is that you?
Yeah. So that's my task now, and a lot of my focus. I guess I don't actually distill much anymore. It feels like I oversee distillation and work with that, but our team is really great, and they keep it consistent and steady going year round. And so my focus has shifted a lot on actually the creation of the batches and selections for what we call our 1 barrel bourbon, single barrels. So doing a lot of that more so. And so each time how we create those batches, it's really embracing that seasonality of that bottled and bond, right? You have to pick from one distilling season. And so this wasn't the concept when we first started laying down, but ultimately to show where that's coming from and embracing the barrels that are available and where they're at in the rick house and which ones best showcase at that time. And so that's kind of what we're doing. And so each time we bottle it, it's going to be slightly different. It's going to be unique. I would venture to guess, well, I know all 4 of those bottles that you tried, they're going to have different ratios on them, different percents, different floors. A lot of shared floors generally through the seasons, just because, maybe in fall of 2018, we put a lot of barrels in a couple different locations in that rick house. But ultimately, there's still variability within that floor itself, or multiple floors. And so kind of embracing that and all that comes with it. Kind of on that note, our holladaybourbon.com has a distiller's journal that people can check out. You can go in, and the details that you don't find on the bottle, Angel share, which specific ricks from the rick house they came from. All of those details, the thought process, that's on a distiller's journal for each bottling. And so try to keep that up and maintain it, just because we want to, again, we're not hiding anything. And so give those transparency details to any of the bourbon nerds that want to know that. And so, that's kind of, again, my ultimately the focus that I've had more lately.
Well, I'm one of those bourbon nerds. I want to know more details. I want to know, what you're thinking on a daily basis and stuff. I don't want to look in your journal too deep and say, "Hi, I took a piss right here," but, I do want to know those details and stuff. So, one of the details I'd love to know is, some of the stuff that you might have experimental or new products that might come out. Like, do you guys produce an American single malt? Are you looking at that? Your rye whiskeys? Um, Let the listeners know about those things if you could.
Yeah, yeah. So we have not we have nothing that is really going to be of age soon of a different category necessarily. We well, I say that there's one that we as a company and as a brand had always had, and it was a corn whiskey, and so we actually have some aged, decently aged corn whiskey, but I don't know the plan for that. But that was laid down. But yeah, we don't have, no American single malt. We've played around and I've looked at and don't have any specifics because I don't know anything yet of when it will be. But maybe the rye whiskey or wheat whiskey. Those to me are fascinating categories, kind of ancillary to what we're doing with a bourbon with rye and a bourbon with wheat. But our history was bourbon. That's what we stuck with when we were laying down this, huge investment. And so I didn't want to venture too far off. And finally, I think got trust of the upper management to let me do my thing. And so we'll start laying some things down. But in terms of other mash bills, things we have been doing on site, we have a cave collection where we just look at secondary finishing, the toasted barrel finishing, and those type of products. That's just been on site. We take 6-year-old bourbon, put it into a secondary cask for a bit longer, just to see what would happen. Experimental for us, and then who knows, maybe something else will spark interest, and we'll spread it throughout the country. No plans yet, but we started with that 1856 original mash bill. We have released all those throughout this time, and then soft red wheat mash bill. We did that and are set to release those later this, probably early summer. Start releasing some of those. But kind of like what you alluded to earlier, what fascinates me most is kind of the older products of these. And so our first 8-year of the bourbons were 1-barrel bourbons, single barrels. We released those at our distillery, and we're going to be hitting some of those out into the market later this year. So that should be fun to see. Then I don't know what the plan will be, but maybe do some 8-year soft red wheat. But ultimately, this is all leading up to a 10-year product for us that we know we had kind of planned on that 10-year mark. And historically, that was about the oldest that we ever did here, and may play around with some stuff older, but we don't really want over oaked products either. And so we want to kind of find that balance. But 10 years, I think, is going to for sure be in the works for both mash bills as well.
Nice. I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing that you're talking about. And I think I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And I'm hoping possibly one day a shout out to my good friend Nick Dunn over there in Kansas City. Maybe I can pay Angela and Nick a visit and then come up to the distillery. Nick is an old Coast Guard shipmate off the Coast Guard cutter Mackinac, and he wanted to go back home and to Kansas City, and I'd love to come see them. They were part of a little club we had back in the day called the Country Club that nobody else was to be a part of, just 3 of us. So to my friends Ross and Nick, maybe we can share a pour of Ben Holladay out at the distillery. I'd love that. So Kyle, where can our listeners find you guys on social media?
Yeah, so should be on most platforms. Holladay 1856 is kind of the tagline that we have. So you should be able to find it on all, but I don't think we do TikTok. But beyond that, can find it. And then hollidaybourbon.com. That's the one I always encourage people to go look, because it does it has all those wonderful, beautiful images, the cocktail recipes, the distiller's journal, and the full history of our facility. And so always encourage people to go check out hollidaybourbon.com.
Well, Kyle, I can't thank you enough for number one, introducing my listeners to your whiskey, but just coming on here as a guest and is a fellow farmer and talking whiskey with me and sharing your whiskey with me. I always appreciate that. You guys sent me this wood cork. I was looking for it, which is pretty cool because we have a beer fridge that has magnets and stickers on it.
Yeah.
And we got some stickers from you guys, but I appreciate you guys sending us bottles. And this is actually a bung hole, from a bung hole. So I really like. My wife was like, "That's pretty damn cool." But I appreciate you coming on here. Any last word for my listeners out there?
I think it just kind of going back to what we talked about earlier is just, if you're one of those people that doesn't typically drink from outside of Kentucky, give hopefully Holladay bourbon a try, or others. It's a lot of people putting in a lot of hard work into making bourbon. And so don't get the inherent bias that you have one way or another with whiskey. Don't let that get in the way of trying something new. So definitely appreciate you having me on and being able to tell our story. And so, yeah, very thankful for that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, listeners, you know what I like to say. You know where you can find me at. You can find me on all social media platforms at The Whiskey Trip, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I'm on YouTube now. Please go over there and watch those videos. I'm trying to figure out how to do these Squadcast videos on there for you so you can watch those. I'm almost there. I'm right at the doorstep. So just hang on with me. I'm trying to get these videos out there. I'm a one-man show right now. I'm trying to bring on an assistant, so look for that hopefully soon. I'd like to tell everybody out there, if life gets you down, if life doesn't happen the way you think it's going to happen, stick with it. That's where the good Lord meant you to be, and take it one sip of whiskey at a time, and enjoy where you're at. I know that personally lately is I know I'm where I'm supposed to be right here in life, to help certain people out, to mentor people, to bring good whiskey to you. So that's my word to you. I appreciate you listening to me. If you're listening to me, like I always say, listen to the Bourbon Life, Matt and Mark. They do a great show on the Bourbon Life. Give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcast and on Spotify, and copy and paste those over onto my Facebook page. Invite your friends to follow my Facebook page. Those reviews, those follows, those listens, those all open up the doors to distilleries out there. Get great guests on my show, like Holladay and Mr. Kyle here, their Master Distiller, gets great whiskey in my hands. And I can't say thank you enough for all those. But keep doing it, and I'm going to keep producing shows for you to give you great content, to take that 30-minute commute to work, to make it through the day and say, man, I can't wait to listen to that extra 30 minutes on the way home. And I can't wait to go to the liquor store and try to find this bottle of Holladay red wheat Rickhouse proof. I guarantee you're going to want to get it in your hands. This Ben Holladay Rickhouse proof of the 1856 original, or the bottle and bonds. I will guarantee you're going to love them. If not, come back and tell me, hey, they weren't for me. But I'll tell you, that's just enough for somebody else to enjoy. There's a whiskey out there that I guarantee you will enjoy. We'll find it. If you have a distillery in your backyard that I haven't had on my show, send me their information. Go and visit them and say, hey, we want you to go on this podcast. Hit them up and say, hey, why haven't you been on the Whiskey Trip podcast with Big Chief? Don't forget to come and see me in New Orleans or in Austin, Texas, or in the fall at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. I'm hoping to be there. I've got an invite. I should be in Kentucky for a couple weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. This is Old Big Chief, and thanks for taking this ride with me.